Namaskaram, Sadhguruji, and thank you very much for joining us on Times Now. Sadhguruji, we've heard a lot of medical updates, we've heard a lot of health updates coming in. I want to ask you, India and the world is in the middle of this grave crisis called coronavirus outreach. I want to ask you, are we prepared enough to fight the coronavirus challenge that has come our way?
See, considering the nature of this, I don't think anybody can be prepared enough. There is no such thing. It is just that how many lives will we sacrifice for this? This we can contain and control. Can we really stop the infection going across the population? No. The question is only, will we allow it to peak in such a way that mortality becomes unmanageable? This we can manage with the social distancing and individual spaces that we create between human beings. Because this is a process where we are the carriers. Our responsible behavior and a conscious way of doing things could greatly restrict the virus. I think we need to understand this virus is not a new entry into our lives. We live in an atmosphere of bacteria and virus. We live in literally an ocean of bacteria and virus. The important thing is that this is new to our system, so our bodies are struggling with this. And particularly vulnerable populations like senior citizens, those who are on immunoblockers, and people who have transplants and other things, they're at great risk. So protecting them and making sure that the spread doesn't peak out too quickly, rather spreads out slowly, is what we can do. Right now, today, the Prime Minister has appealed for a one-day curfew, but we need much more than that. But in a country like this, where people have to work for their daily livelihood on a daily basis, it is very, very difficult to really clamp down for longer periods of time. One day itself is if we successfully pull this, is a great achievement. It will help to some extent, but the important thing is how we handle ourselves, how responsibly we behave with each other. Because I saw yesterday all the crowds are rushing into the railway stations to go back home, whatever. Well, this is a recipe for disaster, that everybody crowding into the trains like that, because a whole lot of us, including you and me, could be asymptomatic carriers right now. Now, will we go through this with mild symptoms or no symptoms, or will it become serious illness in us, is a question of various other parameters within our own systems. So one thing that we can all do is to build up our immune systems, which is not something that you can do in a short period of time, but in 4 to 6 weeks, people can make a significant difference for their immune systems and be able to more ready to handle this. But this is a pandemic which will naturally spread across the population. The thing is, we shouldn't allow it to peak.
All right, the government is trying to do that, the government is trying to contain the numbers. You talked about a one-day lockdown that the Prime Minister has appealed for, which is the Janata curfew, which is why we are all sitting in our own homes. You're talking to us from your own center, I'm at home talking to you, we are all following this. But do you think, Sadhguruji, a one-day curfew is going to solve our problems, or do you think we need to go into a clampdown, lockdown situation for a longer period of time like other countries have done, Italy, the United States? Do you think we need something tougher and for a longer period of time if we have to control the numbers?
Definitely a longer period is needed. We are looking at a week-long curfew within the yoga center, but we are an organized group of people, we can do this, but larger populations, I doubt whether it can be done. So what I would say is, all those who are not earning their daily bread with daily work, that is, they can take a break for 15 days, those who take vacations in their life for a week, 10 days, such people, this is the time for them to take that vacation at home and ensure that they are not a part of spreading it. But there is a population which has to go out and work. We cannot absolutely stop them. Providing food and necessary things for them, for their life, will be extremely difficult. So restricting it as much as possible for a 2-week period is definitely an ideal thing to do. But is the ideal thing doable in a nation of 1.4 billion people is a big question mark. But this one day is significant for us to see whether we can do it or not. This is like a test that we can do it. I think we should do it because this may wipe out it is not that this is going to be the end of the world, it is just that serious losses can happen, and there is also loss of life, precious life will be gone, economic losses will happen, businesses will collapse, and above all, people's lives will be so badly disrupted, it'll take months or years for them to build back.
So Sadhguruji, many people today are worrying that our numbers are at 315, we've had 4 fatalities, but people feel we haven't tested enough and the numbers in reality could be much higher, and these numbers are not being reflected in the official numbers that are being put out today. Do you agree with this fear that lurks in everybody's mind today?
See, not just in India, nowhere in the world are numbers real. Nobody can really ever say, this is exactly the number of people infected, there's no such thing. It is just that those who show symptoms and those who are tested, we can come to arrive at some number. To make a projection, to look for a trajectory as to where are we going. But no number is absolute, not only in India, anywhere else it is not absolute. Definitely in India, because how can you test 1.4 billion people and arrive at a exact number? There's no such thing. So, it is true what they're saying, but this should not be said for fear-mongering to create a crisis situation, because human fear transmits much faster than virus. So at least let's contain that. Let us not go into a tizzy and cause more harm to ourselves than the virus can cause. We need to understand the virus is not interested in killing us because we are its habitat. They want us to live and they want to live within us. But if we die, they're disappointed. So let us not disappoint them. Let us see that they live through us and we produce the necessary antibodies, we become capable of handling it as we've become capable of handling everything else. For this, there are a few things to do. And to put it in perspective, it is… I know a whole lot of people will pounce on these things in different ways. It is not that whatever I say now is a cure for coronavirus or something like that, but generally to keep the body in a certain level of our immune system at a certain level of function and vitality, there are a few things one can do, some things you cannot do all of a sudden. For example, if you had been practicing certain type of yogic practices like Surya Kriya or whatever, naturally your immune system would be up. But the simple thing that Indian people can do, which is widely available, there are many other things, but one thing that's widely available is the neem leaf. Every day 8 to 10 leaves in the morning on an empty stomach and drink some tepid water or warm water and leave it for about 1.5 hours, you will see in 6 to 8 weeks' time, your immune system will be at least a few percentage points higher. This is what you need to go through this thing without causing fatality to yourself and people around you. At least simple things like this can be practiced. There are traditional offerings like Jiva Lehyam, our Chavanaprash, all these things also build immune system. It may not be possible for everybody to consume, but if you bring such things in, and there are various other substances, if we want, we can send you a list of those things, what people can consume which are naturally available, which can enhance one's immune system, like amla is available across the country. This is also at the fag end of the season. Raw mango is available all over the place right now, don't wait for it to ripen, eat the raw mango. All these things can boost the immune system to some extent. It is not… it's a preventive or a cure for coronavirus, but it can up the immune system a little bit and this is what we can do. And above all, keeping yourself physically active. Now people are at home, if they just sit and through the day, if they're eating something or they drink alcohol, they will make themselves much more susceptible. One simple thing is to stay physically active. It would be very good time for us, use these 2 to 4 weeks, whatever that is, to get fit. At least if you don't know anything else, simply jog on the spot every day, at different times, maybe 15 minutes at a time, 5 to 6 times a day, and the body will try to handle things better.
Well, yes, the key is to improve our immune system. You're absolutely right there, and there are several natural ways to do that. I understand when you say that people are going to question whether this is a scientific way, but yes, improving immune system is the key right now, so that our immune system can fight this disease. So Sadhguruji, thank you very much for those suggestions for our viewers. But Sadhguruji, I also want to ask you that there is despite trying to tell people, there is a sense of negativity, there is a sense of hopelessness that some people are feeling because they haven't seen something like this before. The last time we'd seen an epidemic, a pandemic like this was somewhere a century ago in 1918. Many people, the younger generation, haven't really heard or seen something like this. How do you think we can dispel the negativity and the low morale that people are facing, because that in itself could be a cause for our immunity to go down?
Yes, mental distress is one way of putting down the immune system, definitely. To stay fully spirited, joyful and exuberant is also a simple way of keeping your immune system and the body functioning much better. You're talking about younger generation who are going into some kind of a shock. I met a few people and they're they're very shocked that such a thing can happen in modern era. Well, we need to understand this. You may be going viral on social media here and there doing things. If you do some funny thing, you may go viral, but the important thing is we live in a world of bacteria and virus. There are trillions of… their population is trillions of times more than human population. In fact, we are living because of them. They live within us and they live around us. It is just that right now we have a virus that our systems still do not know how to handle. We will learn to handle this probably in 6 to 12 months' time, according to most experienced people, they are saying that. But within that time, what kind of price we pay, this is what we are trying to contain. To contain this, responsible behavior and conscious behavior is most important. Just to put things into perspective for all those people who know too much of textbook science but not practical experience of life, we are here, most of us, all of us who live here are 24/7. That is, 7 days of the week, 365 days we are on. In the last 38 years, I have not cancelled a single event or even an appointment because I am not well. Does it mean to say I am not human or I am some superhuman? No, little conscious living. This can do this. Everybody can manage this with a little bit of responsible and conscious living. The young people should need to understand that this is the world we live in, this is the natural world. Without virus and bacteria, we cannot be alive, but if we do not know how to handle them, they will also take our lives.
Very true, but Sadhguruji, the Prime Minister addressed the nation just a couple of days ago, and he appealed to the nation to follow the normal do's and don'ts. It was wise, sagacious advice that was given by the Prime Minister. But we live in an atmosphere also where the opposition has found fault with even these simple suggestions that have come from the Prime Minister. I want to ask you today, Sadhguruji, there are divergent views. Yes, everybody agrees that there should be support and financial support coming in for the daily wage earners. There is a lot more that needs to be done. But do you think we are right when we oppose each other at the time when the country is in grave crisis?
This is very important. This is a time that we stay together and act as one nation. This is very, very important. This is not a time that there is somebody called government and there is somebody called opposition. This must go. Right now, all of us are Indians, and virus does not make a distinction whether you're in the government or in the opposition, it'll anyway come to you. And especially most of the parliamentarians and people who are in the political sphere are over 60 years of age and they are at great risk. So please, it is very important, this is not about the Prime Minister. Well, he happens to be the leader of this nation, so he makes the appeal. Because India is what it is, it needs an emotional appeal and he is making that. So whoever was the Prime Minister would have naturally done that. This is not about the present Prime Minister or Mr. Narendra Modi. It is very, very important to understand it's not about him. It's about the safety and well-being of the citizens of this nation. I hope everybody is mature enough to get that.
Well, very correct. But Sadhguruji, I also want to ask you a question, and the question is about the protests that have been going across through the length and breadth of this country. Several explanations, several dialogues, several parliamentary interventions have been made, yet the Citizenship Amendment Act has been a bone of contention. Today at Shaheen Bagh in Delhi, there are still crowds sitting there because they think it is their fundamental right to sit and protest. There are all sorts of reports that they could be carriers of this very, very fatal type of virus that we are facing. Do you think there should be strict intervention from the powers that be, given the fact that they haven't really shown the will to get up and be responsible citizens themselves? What would you advise them today, those who are sitting at Shaheen Bagh on their anti-CAA protests?
See, if it comes to fundamental rights, it is your fundamental right to do your work. It's my fundamental right to do my activity. But today, across the world, the various important events that we had, we called off everything because all of them involve mass gatherings. So, this is not a time to talk about rights, this is a time to talk about how responsibly are we going to behave. Responsibility should be the word, not rights. This is not a time for rights. And if you or me behave irresponsibly, it's not just about my life or your life. This is going to affect everybody's life in this country, and to what extent it will happen, nobody can really make an estimate. So, it is very important, it doesn't matter what is your cause, you understand, you postpone it at least for a month, whatever your cause is. Your cause is an endless cause, it's going to go on forever, you have right to protest for the rest of your life, please do it, but give a month's break for everything that you're doing. But I thought in New Delhi, there was one Section 144 and enforcing that is also the business of the law.
Sadhguruji, I want to ask you, the Prime Minister in his appeal also said at 5 o'clock in the evening, we should all come out, clap our hands, ring bells, do whatever, but also laud this, hundreds and thousands of health workers who've put their lives on the line to battle with this crisis, to take care of every single Indian citizen and every foreign citizen who's in India, who's also in one way or the other affected by this virus. Sadhguruji, what would you do at 5 p.m. This evening?
We are planning an event where all our drummers will be out with 5 minutes of big drumming and also certain amount of physical activity involved in this. Well, as a nation, I have to say this with some pain, as a nation, I think we lack ability to acknowledge people when they deserve it. We think everything can be fixed by criticism. Unfortunately, this has to go. We have to acknowledge people for the wonderful things that many human beings do. When I say acknowledge people on a daily basis, well, if you take a bus, how many people even look at the driver and the conductor and say thank you or at least do namaskaram? This is simply missing in most people. We were not a culture like this in the past. We were a culture where for every small thing that we received, we always bowed down to each other, but unfortunately it's been gone. But at a time like this, medical professionals, security agencies and various other people who are managing essential services, we must understand they're risking their own lives and the lives of their families to make this happen because they work in a hospital and they go home and they may be taking death home. So when they're doing such a kind of service, if we do not acknowledge, it is terrible. It's not just one day, 5 minutes, every moment of our lives we must express our gratitude. I know it'll be too much to ask the country to do this. Every day in the morning when you get up, at least for the next 6 months, till this passes, please everybody at least generate one thought in your mind that we are truly grateful for all the people who are working to make this, as minimal as possible, risking their own lives.
True, but many people have come out and criticized even this appeal by the Prime Minister, because the Prime Minister said, come out in your balconies. So many people have now questioned that how many people in this country have homes which have balconies, and is the Prime Minister forgetting the poor? They found fault with every single appeal. What do you make of this? Are we a cynical society, or is it just that Prime Minister Modi is an easy target for them to just concentrate their hate on?
I don't think we have to pay any attention to them. If you don't have a balcony, you have a front yard to come and do this. Or if you are afraid to come out of your house, even within your house you can do it. So, about these people, let us not pay too much attention and turn negative ourselves because they are an extremely small number. I don't think we should pay attention to them. They're just… these small numbers are extremely noisy, so we are beginning to imagine that they represent the nation's consciousness. They do not. So fortunately, you will see most of the citizens will abide by the curfew. They will definitely acknowledge the people who are serving them. It is just that they need to be reminded, and that's the reminder I think the Prime Minister has given. So I would say, I will appeal to all your viewers and yourself that every day in the morning when you get up, you are bowing down to some unknown gods, just bow down to the people who serve you on a daily basis.
Sadhguruji, I also want to ask you that many people are looking at this pandemic very philosophically. They're looking at the spread. It started from China, it's come across to Italy, the United States, Iran. And many people are saying it is because we've abused the planet, the environment so much that this is the way that it's hitting back. That's one theory. The other theory, of course, is that this is some kind of biological warfare that has been unleashed by one of the powerful nations and the entire world is paying for it. How do you see this? If you look at this philosophically, what do you think is the reason behind such a worldwide pandemic of this nature?
See, about new viruses entering our system from, let's say, animal kingdom is happening all the time, all the time. It is just that a particular virus we do not know how to handle. This has happened repeatedly in many times. In recorded history, we may look at it as maybe 5 times or 10 times, but I would say it has happened many more times. It is just that it could have happened to somebody in some remote place and they could have died right there and they did not manage to spread it. Or there is also one thing, it might have jumped from animal kingdom to humans, but it may not be capable of jumping from one human to another. These things are always happening, it is not new. It's unfortunate that people take pleasure in creating and weaving stories and philosophies around a tragedy that is risking many people's lives. This is a time for responsible and resolute action, not a time to weave philosophies and stories and create a kind of negative narrative for everything that we come across in our lives.
Sadhguruji, I've got a message from a viewer who wants you to address and give a message in Hindi as well, and he says, English bhi chalega. What would you like to say to these viewers who want to hear you in Hindi as well?
Me trying to speak Hindi may kill me sooner than the virus because my Hindi is that bad and my Hindi may not be good for his health also, please tell him that. I hope to pick up some Hindi, but not yet. And if I say something really wrong, it'll go viral.
Sadhguruji, I once again… No, but it could be a simple message. Sadhguruji, you could try.
If you tell me a line, I could repeat.
Sadhguruji, I also want to ask you this. Are we really in for a long haul on this one? Do you think if we fight this right, the virus is going to be defeated sooner than we expected? How do you see this?
I don't believe virus will be defeated, that's a wrong approach. It is just that virus may become friendly to our bodies. It may not be so damaging if we receive it in a certain way. Well, one thing, this is not a proven fact, but one thing I think is, generally people who live in India for a variety of reasons, their immune systems may be far more resilient compared to what is happening in Western societies, simply because of the exposure that we normally have on a day-to-day life to various other microorganisms. So this may save us right now, this may limit the fatalities, but protecting the aged population and the vulnerable population is most important. If we protect that, I believe people who are youthful, people who are within 50 years of age, largely will pass through this with minor illness and come out. Infants also may be at risk below 1 year of age or below 6 months or 8 months of age, they may be at risk, and people who are 60 years of age may be at great risk. So if we take care of this, if we ensure that our parents, grandparents, whoever may be at home, that we keep them really isolated within the house, really isolated, I mean that your love and concern should be expressed long distance. If you do that, probably we can limit the fatalities. Can we beat the virus? Can we avoid the virus? I don't think so, because that is not the nature of that life, it will spread. But will we peak out in such a way that medically and in terms of national organization, we will not be able to handle it because it peaked out so quickly? That is a big question. That is what we are trying to avoid with this curfew, so that there is a flat, the curve is not too sharp and it is flat, so that in the meantime we will also… our bodies will learn to handle it. Generally it is believed, nobody really knows 100%, but generally it is believed in 6 to 8 months, most human beings will be able to handle it. But in 6 to 8 months, how much of a disaster, how much fatality, how many precious lives will be lost, this is what we are trying to contain. And there is an economic loss which
yes, Sadhguruji,
which is also significant.
True, challenges are many, and as far as we are concerned, awareness is the way to fight coronavirus. So Sadhguruji, as India fights coronavirus with times now, we thank you for your time, because your words will also carry to the viewers, spread awareness and spread the message on how we can fortify ourselves as a country to fight coronavirus. Thank you, Sadhguruji, and namaskaram. Thank you for joining us on Times Now.
Responsible and resilient